welcome everybody. School counselor constituents, I guess you would say, right? Is that right?
Our school counselor buddies. That sounds
Buddies?
a little better. That sounds a little better.
Just trying to get fancy. Yeah, come on in. Welcome everybody. I recognize most of the names, maybe some new ones on here, but welcome back if you tune in regularly and welcome I guess for the first time or first couple times if you're a newbie. So and let us know any newbies here if you're willing to share and say, yeah, I'm new. Tell us you're a newbie and where you're from. If you wouldn't mind, what part of the country. We always like seeing that. And to break the ice here, I'm Matt Carpenter. I'm one of the founders of College A Pro, and I'm in Salem, Mass. So just north of Boston. We had a fake storm yesterday, fake blizzard that never came, the blizzard that never was. Good enough for no school, but no, that was about the extent of it, which is rare for us. And then Peggy, my buddy's out there in Seattle. So cool, from Charleston, South Carolina. We got a lot of buddies, a lot of we call them the Greenville Mafia, ironically, because they're the sweetest Southern gals you could possibly meet. But three of our teammates are down there in Greenville, South Carolina.
Wow, we got a Georgia, Savannah. We got a Southern contingent going today. Nice.
There we go. Cool. So we're going to spend some time just talking about these new, I guess, giving you guys in some ways letting you in on how we're coaching our audience, right? Specifically class of 2024 right now. You know, what's going on with this madness that just seems to continue. And just kind of keep you up to speed there so you can share that, you know, I guess kind of echo that to your families. As always, you know, we want you guys asking questions. We want to answer those questions and talk about what's, you know, top of mind for all of you. And yeah, just help you educate your audience. And I'm putting my link in here because I see a lot of our high school partners are on here, which is awesome. But if you don't partner with us, book some time with me to figure out talk a little bit about what that looks like. We always like to learn about, again, your district, your school, and how we can, excuse me, Peggy. Thank you. Appreciate that. How we can best support you, right? And you know, so take advantage of that, right? And because we're confident, no matter where you are, no matter what type of school that you have, that we can provide some value and make sure that both you and your families know where to go with their financial aid, scholarship questions, etc. So I'll do a deeper dive when we close here. But yeah, keep the questions coming. You know, obviously we're going to talk about the latest and greatest with the FAFSA, what families should be doing now during some of this holding pattern here, because there are some things that they can and should be doing, and we want to make sure that we're doing our best to enforce that, for lack of a better word, or at least encourage it. That's probably a better word.
Yeah.
So Peg, if you would, the fairy godmother financial aid from Seattle, well, not from Seattle, Peggy, from New Jersey, currently residing in the
Perfect. Yes. All right. I will share my screen here. All right. So this is us. I know we have a bunch of people. I don't know if you saw, Matt, that said they were new. So we're College Aid Pro, and this is truly our mission. And working with you guys are in the trenches, right? With the kids. And so this is huge for us, you know, supporting you in any way we can. That's truly how we're going to get to every family, right? And maybe change some of the ways things work and some decisions that families make that aren't necessarily in their best interest with financial stuff and the whole bit. So that's truly what gets us out of bed, the two of us, every day. So so let's talk about, we're going to get into private scholarships and appealing in a minute, but let's talk about the latest news, which I'm sure all of you are aware that the ICERs, this FAFSA information, now the government is saying they're not going to share it until the first half of March. Hopefully there won't be an additional delay. We all at CAP, Matt and I were talking about this before this announcement was made. We figured, all right, this is going to get delayed. I didn't think it was going to be delayed that much, but it is what it is. So our talk track with families is really, hey, take a deep breath. There's nothing you can do about this. Everybody's in the same boat. And how can you find a silver lining here? How can you make this time beneficial? That's kind of where we're going. So the good news is they are fixing the problem, and they've already put out the numbers. We already have it in our software. Matt's going to show you our consumer facing software for families in a minute. All those numbers are in there. So it's good, especially for low income families. It's going to make a more of a significant difference, but they're basically increasing the allowances. So that lowers the income that's looked at in the equation. So that's the good news, that it's good for all families, especially low income. We'll see the impact. They won't understand, but it's, their SAI is going to go down basically. The bad news is the delay, all of this. I remember with my kids, like I was actually taking them to colleges now because we knew we had award letters in the next week or two. And over winter break, we could go see schools that were on the short list where we knew packages, families just don't have that this year. So it kind of is what it is. So how are we seeing colleges handle this? And it's interesting, day by day, we're seeing new stuff. So the FAFSA only colleges just came on our radar. One of our pros that we have on our team posted it in our Slack channel this morning, but I had seen it yesterday too, that some colleges that are FAFSA only, they're the ones that are kind of scrambling here, right? Because they don't have any data and they want to get back to families with financial aid packages. So Beloit, actually in Wisconsin, cute little school. I toured it several years ago when I was on a tour of the Wisconsin schools. They're basically saying, hey, submit the CSS and we will go off that. And if that's, if the FAFSA comes out better, we're going to make you whole with our institutional grants. So that's how they're moving the process along, so they can give families financial aid award packages. Some colleges are creating their own financial aid forms and telling the families to do that. Some, I'm using the CSS, but Beloit kind of had a lot of language around it. It wasn't just submit it. It was like, submit it, but we're going to make you whole. Most families don't understand the difference between the federal calculation and the institutional. But, when you throw in their primary home and all that, that could make it worse. So they're saying, hey, we're going to honor the federal methodology. Some colleges have said, hey, we're updating our net price calculator, which a lot of them don't update very often. And they're sending families there. And then I have this question mark moving deadlines because we talked about that. And then sure enough, and there's more schools that have done it, but this May 1st deadline, the big guys, the UCs and the Cal States last week or the week before, I can't even remember, said, hey, we're moving it to May 15th. These schools are moving it because they want families to have time to figure this out. So that's a good thing for families. They'll have a little bit more time. So what can your families be doing during this delay? They can be totally dialing in whatever their list is, like the ones they're really interested in. What are their net costs? Are they accurate? Do they have all their data? If they submitted the FAFSA and they have an SAI, which not everybody got because of some of the tech glitches, that's a great starting point. But if they're CSS schools, do they have a good idea, order of magnitude, what they could be getting in need-based and or merit? And they probably have heard for merit on some of them, but maybe not. Maybe not if they're regular decision schools, they haven't heard yet. What we're going to talk about today, are private scholarships part of this? And some families, that's going to be part of the strategy. So use this time to start doing that, which Matt's going to talk about in a minute. Also thinking about potential appeals. Do we already have schools that have offered merit and they're competing schools, and we can already start putting together an appeal and maybe even appeal now, or be ready when you're waiting for a few other schools that you might want to use in an appeal, especially, especially for merit, and just start that appeal process. So it's just the idea of, you don't have to sit and twiddle your thumbs and be stressed about this, Mr. and Mrs., family. Make a benefit out of this, do something.
Peggy,
So
let me break in real quick if I could,
sure,
because we have a
sure.
question here that's probably worth talking about, and I'll be curious to get your reaction too. But the question is can you explain how the update, modification, et cetera, to the FAFSA process works with the profile? Okay, so is there an impact with the profile? If I understand your question correctly, and please chime in if I do not, but how is this FAFSA change, whether it's the delay, whether it's the actual formulaic change, okay, impact the CSS profile? And how I would answer that is really for the CSS profile schools, for the most part, they don't care about your FAFSA. Okay, that is really just a formality. It's something that you have to complete just to make sure that you're eligible for the need-based financial aid program, federal financial aid programs that you're entitled to. Okay, but really the CSS profile schools are going to give you aid or not give you aid based on their specific formulas. That is not the federal formula. Okay, so what's happening with this modification of the FAFSA, which has to do with the family's income allowance, really has no correlation to what how the CSS profile and that formula and specific schools that work within it operate, right? So again, for schools that are just looking at the FAFSA, certainly this is going to be relevant for a lot of families. Obviously, the timing, but also the actual formula change. But for schools that require the CSS profile, it changes little to nothing. Is how I'd answer that question. I'm curious if you have a different take or not, Peggy.
No, I agree. I mean, the CSS profile has allowances, just like on the federal side. They've always been significantly more generous than the federal side. They still are, even with this change. So they're not changing their allowances. They haven't shared they are. It's part of their, like Matt said, the institutional calculation. So what we're seeing now is, before this update went in, but I don't, when you look at the two, hey, income allowances before they corrected their error and after, there's a change, but it's not like there's an allowance of $40,000 and all of a sudden it's 80,000. They're not significant changes like that. That's why, as I said earlier, low income families it will be a much bigger boost because their income's lower. So it's a higher percentage of the income that's now not going to be included, compared to a family that makes 125,000, lower percentage. It's a win for everybody, but lower percentage. But I agree, the CSS, they have these higher allowances, and we are seeing more families, certain kind of families, where they're institutional, the CSS profile SAI is actually lower, especially if they have crossover years with their kids. They have more than one child in school at a time. We see it, but even without that, and it really is because the CSS, for the assets and the income, much higher allowances. They look at more things on the asset side. So for some families, it doesn't show up that way. But yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, the FAFSA is hugely important. Most families, or I shouldn't say most, but a lot of families are taking advantage of the direct student loan. So as long as the student submits it, that's on the table. So yeah, it's not going to really affect the CSS. So I agree. So what do your families absolutely need to do? They need to get the FAFSA submitted. All these schools have deadlines. They've been soft for sure this year, because especially when it first came out, it was a mess, and people couldn't get in and the whole bit. But I tell people, get it in, get that email. The student gets an email and it's been submitted. It has a submission date. Even if they don't get an SAI on there, it'll have a submission date, the DRN number, and the estimated SAI. Some of them say we can't calculate it because we're missing signatures. They shouldn't worry about any of that, because that's on the government, right? That's a tech glitch. but it's CYA for families. Like they've got it in, that's your submission date. So if a school comes back and says, hey, you're eligible for federal aid, but you missed the deadline, so you're not getting as much, they can show, yeah, we did get it in. So that's the main thing. Get it in. We've talked about the flow of that, which we're not going to get into today about how to do it, but that's the main thing. If they haven't done it, get it in. And somebody wrote in the chat about things that weren't flowing right. These things are happening. They're still happening, but as long as they have that submission date, they're good to go. All right, so I will stop my share here and let you
Yeah, and just kind of to that point, right? It's still glitching, you know, and I think most of you probably noticed by now, and but just in case, you know, I think some of the biggest frustrations or causes for anxiety are for families that have um, already submitted the form and they know they've made a mistake, or it's saying they can't calculate the
or they
SAI.
forgot a school.
Got a school, or a new school popped up. Like I sent it the first week of October and I decided in November what my dream choice was, right? And you can't add that school. So very understandable why people are just geeking here. Again, the message is nobody can access these FAFSAs once they processed until they process, which is mid-March, right? So we still don't have a date, and if they hit mid-March, this will be the first deadline they've hit. So in my mind, I'm like, is this going to be the one? Probably not. I don't know, based on the evidence we have so far. But anyways, it's that's why I think it's important just to be the I don't know, the calm one in the room, to just say none of these colleges have seen a FAFSA yet. There's nothing anybody can do. And just like Peg said, that's what we're saying multiple times a day. And I think that's one of the most important roles that we can play at the moment, right?
Yeah, and I would say if there is a student, you know, if you have a family and they're like, oh, we forgot a couple schools, or as Matt said, you know, a new one popped up on the radar, I would just have them call the school and say, hey, here's my name. I've applied. I just want to make sure that you include me in that first bucket, especially if they know they're eligible for need-based aid, and just document who they talk to. And I think that will help, you know, the parents sleep at night. Like, okay, if you know, when all else fails, just call the school and let them know. They should be much, much kinder this year because they know all the stress they're going through too, you know. They're going through the stress too. And also the student aid report, which is now called the FAFSA submission summary, that's not available. None of this is going to be available until it processes, right? And as Matt said, you know, mid-March, you know, and fingers crossed on that.
Knock on wood, exactly. Okay, cool. So I just put this link in the chat here for those of you that are not familiar. The next thing I want to talk about is, okay, so what can we be doing now? We can't get on the FAFSA. We can't make a correction. What can and should we be doing? We're going to talk about private scholarships, and also I'll show that in a second because that's one of the answers to that question. But something that we're coaching with our families right now is we have to know about how much these colleges are actually going to cost us when these awards do come to fruition that first week of April. Number one, so we have to know what those numbers are going to look like. And we have to start preparing now to appeal. Okay. Assuming that in most cases we appeal, certainly not always. But for when it's relevant, we want to start doing that now, because there's going to be such an influx, and the timing is again so condensed this year that it is our belief that if we can have our appeals submitted as quick as possible after getting our awards, we are at an advantage. These are the first ones coming into these appeal committees. So there is when there is some discretionary funds, right? That they know every one of these colleges are going to be given out via appeals. So if we can be first in line, that is an advantage, and that is something that we can control today. So this is our platform for those of you who haven't seen it. If anybody wants, you can set up your free account. If you want an upgraded account, just ping us, let us know. We'll get any counselors on there for kind of the full version of the platform. So just let us know if it's something you want. But we consider ourselves to be a source of truth. I think in many components of this process, but helping families understand what these colleges are going to cost them beforehand is one of the most important things for us in terms of providing transparency. So it's like a net price calculator that's very accurate for every college in the country, all in one place. So this is where we're having our families live right now, just to know that look, if you get into NYU, this is what it's going to cost you $45,000. So we have to get ready to appeal that if that number does not seem palpable, right? Versus some of these other colleges. Certainly have families double check the college's net price calculator, but Peg and I have done a whole presentation on this. Generally speaking, most net price calculators are not reliable. Okay, no colleges have their own net price calculator. Peg mentioned the fact that some of them are incredibly outdated because they don't have to update them at all. Some colleges use the federal calculator when they're an institutional school, which is really irrelevant. So anyways, we just kind of buyer beware in terms of their accuracy. We're most confident in ours, of course, and we think the data does support that. But there's never anything wrong with checking in a couple different places. Okay, so that's one thing that we should be doing now. And then once the families are accepted, they will upload their financial aid offers here. So they'll just take a picture of their offer from Providence College or whatever, and they could just take a screenshot. So put in your alma mater, Peggy. Huh? I'm not going to give you a hard time about it today. So I'm a nice guy. So Cornell, Peggy would just take a screenshot or upload the PDF here, save it, and it does two things. Number one, it's going to translate all these. There's about 900 different ways colleges present these financial aid award letters. It's going to put them in one uniform way, right? So we take all those different ways, and now it allows them to essentially have one. We have created one uniform financial aid award and put all colleges in this bucket so they can again compare apples to apples. That's kind of part A. Part B is the platformers that tell them, did you get a good deal? What is the likelihood that you could go back to this college and appeal for more merit or more need-based financial aid? I always pick on BC because they generally underaward need-based financial aid, unbeknownst to consumers, right? So we'll say, hey, Boston College says they should give you more money than they actually did. We think you have a strong chance to appeal, and we think you should do it. Okay. So these are some of the things we're doing right now. Let's understand what these schools are going to cost us. Let's get ready to appeal, and I'll talk X's and O's about that in a few minutes here. And then private scholarships. Now, the first thing that we say, and I'm sure you guys just kind of bang your heads against the wall with this, is that you have to apply for local scholarships, right? On average, 30% of seniors, maybe that number will resonate with some of you all, 30% of the senior class, high school senior class, will apply for local scholarships. And these are scholarships that have to be given away each year. So that it's the best place to fish, right? It's the smallest pond, the best odds. This is where you start. And so again, I'm sure you're trying to get that message out. We reinforce it. Then we want to go zoom out a little bit. Okay, I've exhausted my resources at the local level now, and in our platform here, we have every private scholarship in the country. An important thing to note here is if you can upload high schools that we partner with, you can upload all your community scholarships in here too, so they can make sure that again for your family members, your local community scholarships are in here too, right? But if I just say, okay, I'm a resident of California, so after I have people look at the community level, I want them looking at the state level. So if I'm a California resident, well, here's 6 pages of scholarships that I can apply for because I live in California, right? And we can kind of go through here. Some are gender specific, or it's always a good time to go through your state's options and see which one outside of me just being a resident might be worth applying for. And then once we look at the state level, I like to look at the national level. I think one of the best places to start is just, what are we thinking about studying? Okay. So if I'm thinking about, going to become a CPA, well, here's 6 pages of scholarships for those that are looking to be a CPA. And maybe this particular one is for females that are pursuing this, right? So that if I'm a female that wants to go be a CPA, this is one that I would apply for. And you guys see the other filters here, right? Of ethnicity, religion, et cetera, et cetera. But that is kind of how we're, another thing that we can and should be doing right now is the private scholarships. And we have kind of our best practices for private scholarships. I mean, one of the first and I think most important things to do is just kind of setting expectations, right? Like if we start in the top right, kind of how we coach it is, listen, if you're efficient here and you spend some time and you're organized, we think it's a very reasonable expectation that you can get one, two, three, four, $5,000 maybe. I think $5,000 is close to a home run, but still within the realistic range. So even if a student or a family collectively, even if you put in 10 hours of work here spread out over a couple of weeks and you win $1,000, that's $100 an hour. That's not too bad, right? And then in terms of the application process itself, you guys know this, it's similar to the admissions process, but we always say, listen, don't freak out when you hear that. It's a very watered down version. You've done 90% of the work just by already writing your essay and, having that resume together and all this. Similar to the admissions process too, we coach it to be like, look, the students are in charge of their essays, the applications themselves, etc. If and when financial things come into play, usually we see that to be the, it usually makes sense for the parent or parents to own that if they're involved, right? Obviously, a percentage of kids are just doing this largely on their own as well. And the timing is now, right? For seniors, the timing is really now. So we want them digging in here. And there's still opportunities for currently enrolled college students, and we'll show a specific example of a scholarship for underclassmen high school students in a second here. So you heard me
This
say
one you
this.
kind of already talked
Yeah, I won't
about.
belabor
Yeah.
it. We're shopping local. Right. And number two, I showed you within our platform where the private scholarships live. And that's where we have families. If families haven't done this already, it's a good idea. We always recommend that families do it for the admissions process. Create a new email that everybody has eyeballs on because there's a lot to keep track of. And then you just avoid or at least minimize the amount of spam that these parents get nailed with. If they haven't do it now, just like the admissions financial aid process. Don't miss the deadlines, right? That's going to automatically rule you out. And let's see, what's our last one here, Peggy? Yeah, and this one is largely aimed at families that, for one reason or the other, just they know they're not going to be eligible for traditional need-based financial aid, or at least they think so. So they don't complete the FAFSA and or the CSS profile. Some private scholarships, a good amount of them, require the FAFSA. There's some communities that, a more affluent community right down the street from me in Marblehead, Mass. They have a really big local private scholarship pool. You have to complete the CSS profile if you want to be eligible for those. So again, just got to make sure that we're covering our bases there. Now this is a weird, frustrating one that you guys may have some experience with, something called scholarship displacement, which is essentially where it'll be interesting to see the timing this year, Peg. Maybe this will be one of the benefits to this. Maybe colleges won't even bother with this year. Who knows? But what happens is that a family gets accepted or makes their deposit at a school, right? Traditionally May 1st, obviously not a traditional year this year. And then they get a letter or email from the school, maybe 2-4 weeks later to say, hey, did you win any local scholarships? Did you get any money out there for college that we don't know about yet? And you say, yeah, we won $2,000 from the Rotary Club locally. And you send that to the college, and then the college reduces your need-based award by $2,000, dollar for dollar. That's what's called scholarship displacement. Not every college does that, but it is a thing. So it's just something that we want to be aware of. Usually it impacts need, although we heard just recently of a family that had some merit taken away, which is wild.
Yeah, I've never experienced that. But yeah.
I think that was the first I've ever heard of that. But our kind of biggest coaching point around this is something we always want to appeal. Always want to appeal and kick and scream for, to say, like, just because we won $2,000 locally, that does not mean we didn't need every single one of those dollars and some to go to your college, right? So that's the headline there. But yeah, something to be aware of at a minimum. And this is the scholarship that we talk about for underclassmen. That's really, really generous. I think you know some of the specifics, Peg, maybe, but
Yeah. And this isn't for 2024s. This would be for your students. Juniors is the sweet spot here because there's two deadlines. The first one is May of this year for juniors, and the second one is September. And I always try and get kids to do the May because the earlier they get it in, they start accepting what they call their Cameron Scholars. It's full tuition at any school in the country. So it's huge. And it's for 4 years, which private scholarships are typically 1 year, except for the big boys. And this one is just not, it's competitive, but it's not as competitive as Coca-Cola and some of these other ones. So I always throw that out. And the last time I looked at their website, I think you needed to have a 3.7, but they're looking for kids that they're doing certain types of things. So I usually tell families, hey, go look at the website. Your child's going to know, yeah, mom, I have a chance of getting this, or no, this isn't in the ballpark, but it's just a really good one that I love to showcase. I've yet to have a family win it in all these years, but I think they take 3,000 apps and they have 20 Cameron Scholars every year. So it's wonderful if you can get it. It's huge.
yeah, good one to know about. So, we do entire presentations on best practices for appealing for need-based financial aid, for merit-based scholarships. There's absolutely a method to the madness. That's not for today necessarily, although we will start coaching this. Usually we start in the middle of March. We'll probably back that up a little bit this year, since we're not going to be actually appealing to early April. Although either way, keep an eye out. We'll be talking in depth and do an entire presentation on this. But these are some of the, again, just kind of headlines for what have proven to be the most successful ways to appeal. But again, to just reemphasize what we said at the jump here, this is something that families can and should be doing now, right? Even if we don't have that offer yet, I want to know about what to expect from NYU or whatever and start preparing my appeal now. So the first day I get that award, boom, I'm right in there and I'm appealing, and I'm at a minimum, I'm going to be one of the first to have my appeals read and heard. Okay. So I think that is something that for those that are opportunistic this year can be a competitive advantage. So yeah, that's the headline there.
And then I can take this one, Matt, since to give yourself a breather. So this is a huge opportunity this year for your students that happen to have a sibling in college already, or like I have twins, there's twins in the family, wherever there's going to be crossover years, the new FAFSA calculation, the federal methodology with the changes doesn't include that in the SAI. So they don't reduce that SAI by almost 50%. But the government made this super clear last summer. They are not for the federal giving out Pell Grant, FSEOG, work study, subsidized student loans. The colleges cannot adjust the SAI. They have to go with that federal SAI, not giving the family credit for having two in school. But the colleges can absolutely adjust the SAI when they're giving out their institutional money, their endowment money, right? And we all know that's way more families get institutional grants than are necessarily eligible for the Pell, right? So there's a lot of families that can't afford 50, 60, 70,000 a year that really need those need-based grants. So they need to understand, hey, you can appeal. You can tell them, please take into account, because there is a question on the FAFSA that asks on the new FAFSA, how many students are in school? So the colleges will absolutely know that. Most of them probably won't factor that in, but when you reach out to them, they should. And if they don't, then that's part of the appeal strategy. Like, hey, you didn't take this into account, but XYZ school that you compete with, which you wouldn't say, but you see where I'm going. They did. Can you please adjust your package? My child so wants to go to your school, that kind of thing. So this is it was a crummy change, but this is a huge piece of information that families just won't know. They won't understand that. So it really opens up appeals for a lot of families because we see a lot of families with crossover years. So
Yeah, as I'm thinking here, Peg, what I'm gonna do is, excuse me for 1 second. I'm gonna grab the invitation till so tomorrow night. Peg and I are doing 7 Eastern time. I'll put this in the chat here. We're doing a more expansive presentation around what we just did, essentially for families. So for a lot of our high school partners, blasted that out to their families where we know when we're talking to counselors, a lot of this stuff is day one stuff for you guys. So like, for example, we give them a refresher on, okay, let's zoom out. What's need-based financial aid again? What's merit-based scholarships? We'll get a little more in the weeds in terms of that appeal piece. So we know for you all, again, that's kind of day one stuff, where for a lot of, especially parents going through this for the first time or students, it is not. So we're just cognizant of the fact that we're talking to folks that don't have the level of expertise that you all do at baseline. But we're doing again a version of this tomorrow night that's directed specifically at class 2024 families. We always say the more the merrier, and come as an underclassman to hear this stuff as early as possible. But feel free to share that out with your families if you think there's some benefit there. Obviously, very little turnaround time with that being, a little bit more than 24 hours away here. But if they register, they'll get the recording and all that. So,
well, and sometimes families, we find people, the last call emails we send out, we get tons of registrations because people are like, oh yeah, I saw that. I
right.
didn't move on it, and now I really want to go. So yeah, if it's helpful to your families, you can just share that link, and we'll be sharing a lot of this content. But as Matt said, we're gonna get more into the weeds. We're gonna speak to them as parents and students, not as professionals like you guys and people. It's hugely helpful because these are the next steps in this process, as we all know. But because of this delay, hey, let's start thinking about those and make the most of this time. And it's just less stress for them because they're ready to pounce on appeals, or maybe they're even going to start appealing. Yeah. So if you want to share that, that's awesome. I'll put Matt's link here in the chat again to chat with him about partnering.
Yeah, and
We
let me give. I can give a quick kind of.
Yeah, he can share. And also I put it in the chat. I'll do it again. As Matt said, reach out to us if you want to get an upgraded account, and I'll put it in again. But we have a dedicated email for you all. It's counselor. Oh, is it
It's
counselor?
counselor. There's no S. Counselor.
Okay, counselor@collegeaidpro.com. So I'll put that in the chat too. And we have Anne Marie, who's our superwoman, covers our support area. She'll be all over it and respond to you if you need. Yeah, even if you have questions, any way we can support you.
Anne Marie of the Greenville, South Carolina
Yeah,
mob.
she's part of
Yeah,
the
she's
Greenville
part of the mob. Yeah,
Mafia.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's a real tough cookie, right, Peggy? She's a
Yeah,
real.
yeah. She just got over COVID. She had a very bad case of COVID, unfortunately.
So just real quick for those of you that are new, I mean, there's variations of how we partner with schools, but from a high level, we provide education in real time. So we do this webinar series curriculum throughout the year, making sure that families are educated. They're kind of ahead of the curve in terms of what's happening in real time. We always do it with 2 presenters, so whoever's not talking, similar, you guys get a little feel for it today, is banging away in the Q&A. And all of it's recorded. They get all of those, and then everybody has access to our software. Everybody has access to the platform. Now, if the most of the schools that we partner with, you all don't have any budget, right? There's no budget, there's negative budget, there's whatever. I'm sure a lot of you are nodding your heads, right? That's most of the schools we partner with. So what that looks like is we still provide all the education for free. Anybody that gets everybody has access to a free version of the software. But free and reduced lunch families get all the bells and whistles free in charge, right? Or Title One schools, if you're a Title One school, we can set up your entire school and a counselor account or counselors if you have more than a few folks in your office. We get you on the platform for everybody in the school on there for free as well. The whole all the bells and whistles. So again, book some time, talk to me. Let's figure out how we can help support your school. Obviously, there are a percentage of schools that have some budget where similar if you guys use, Naviance or Score, Zello, School Links, one of these platforms where the school or the district pays and all the families have an account for free, and so do you guys as admins. We have relationships like that as well. So wherever you fit, let us know, and we want to just make sure that we're supporting you guys and supporting the families in your community. And I think that's it for me, Peggy.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, great questions. Keep them coming as always, right? We'll see you in 2 weeks, hopefully. And yeah, let us know how we can help you. And again, don't even think twice if you have a question. Email us. That's what we're there for. We love helping folks out. So guys, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning
Yeah,
in.
have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming, Peggy. I appreciate you.
Sure, no worries.
Bye, guys.